There's something else I want to ask you about though that's not related to this, but I feel like you'll have an interesting response.
Okay.
Okay, so it was hot. It's 90 degrees here in Portland, so it's Portland. So they let school out. Okay, we can't have school. It's 90 degrees. So afternoon we got something. Got nothing to do. My kids home or whatever. So we watched Cool Hand Luke. Which I've watched probably 10 times in my life or 15 times in my life. One of my favorite movies. Okay, so that movie's made in 1967, and uh, I've also been a couple songs that I've been listening to a lot lately is the song Jailbreak by Ace Jailbreak, which is 76 or 77. Escape from Alcatraz, I think it was like 1979-ish, maybe 1980 or whatever. Okay. So there was this period of time when there was a lot of art about the idea of breaking out of jail, right? And there are still people who break out of jail. There was like guys who broke out of jail recently in New Orleans, and one guy immediately makes a TikTok of himself out of jail or whatever. I was reading about this guy in Arkansas, a former cop who broke out of jail. He got caught like a day and a half later. And what I was thinking about is, so prior to the internet and prior to like network computing, if you broke out of jail, could you just never get caught and go into society? And is that completely impossible now? If someone broke out of jail now, could they ever in any way sort of become just like a citizen? Because in the past, if you got out of jail in Georgia and you got to Kansas or whatever, well, how would they, unless you were like just a murderer that the entire country was looking for, if you were just like somebody who was arrested for cutting the heads off of, parking meters or whatever, it's like there would be how would they even know you're there? How would they, you used to be able to get an apartment. You didn't even need ID. I think on my first apartment I got in 1994, I don't think I showed them my ID. I think I just wrote my number down. What do you do now if you escaped from prison? What would you do?
Incredible questions. And I followed the New Orleans thing very closely. It was my kind of story.
Yeah.
There was betting odds about which guy, just based on the mugshots, which guy was going to make it the longest. And I think the consensus when people looked at the pictures, that guy actually did make it the longest. But so I think the heyday for this would have been the 70s. I think when Bundy broke out of the Colorado jail and was somehow able to make it cross country, that was the heyday for a lot of bad behavior. Because we didn't have any cameras. You could just kind of move around and nobody could ever find you. I think the cameras would make it really hard now.
And facial
recognition. It just feels like there's cameras every year, facial recognition cameras. Like the moment, like those New Orleans guys, they move out of there and you're either going, I guess the goal would be to go to Mexico, right? You want to get out of America, right?
I mean, yeah, it would be hard to get into Canada now. Would be pretty hard, but even if if you just escape and you go to a different city, but your name is in the FBI database, you are an escaped prisoner, your mugshot can be called up anywhere. If you get pulled over by a state trooper, I mean, it's very possible that he could be. So
you can't get pulled over anywhere. You're basically better off. I mean, do you want like the terrible answer?
What's the terrible answer?
You're probably better off finding somebody's house that has a super old person living by themselves and probably have to commit another crime, take over that house, and you have about 2 weeks there to to really plan out whatever your situation.
Assuming the person you eliminate has no kids. I mean, I guess if it's Gene Hackman, you're in good shape because his kids don't talk. But if it's if someone had taken over, my parents are dead now, but if someone had taken over my mom's house, that would have been deduced very quickly. That
maybe you have 3-4 days, right, before people are like, I called dad and nobody answered, and now I'm starting to get worried. It's been 4 days. So maybe you have 4 days.
Let's say it works. Let's say you find the old person, and
my point is, I don't think you could be in the streets for the week. I think you have to find some sort of a roof where you can kind of plan what your next thing is. You probably need a car. Maybe you need to switch the license plates. And I think you want to go toward a place that doesn't have a lot of people. So maybe you want to
Okay.
go like middle America, or you want to go like Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota. Like that should be your ultimate goal is once I get there, now there's less people, I can kind of move around. Maybe I find some new house that I could, maybe I could scout a house and doesn't seem like a lot of action. Maybe it's somebody's winter house that they don't even use
Okay.
and just
So,
kind of
so
bounce
yeah.
around. You're
So
going
you're
to
like,
get caught eventually, though, is the point.
so that's the thing. You would say that it is virtually impossible for someone to escape from jail or prison and completely just disappear now.
I think you get caught within a year. I don't think there's any way to not get caught unless you left the country and went. Once you go down, I think once you go to Mexico, that area, I think maybe you have a better chance,
I
right?
mean, wouldn't the move be
What
to
would your move be? You didn't tell me.
well,
I'm here
yeah.
killing old people, and you're not even saying
I mean,
it.
I would think that the thing you would need to do is to find a sympathetic second person, either someone you could convince to start dating you, and live with, or
Oh, right.
maybe
To be like your co-conspirator.
well, somebody who can be like, I can get you food, I can go and do these things for you. But at some point, you're going to have to try to integrate back into society. And I wonder with network computing, if that kind of like, people go off the grid, but you can escape you could escape from all that, I guess. And but then it's like, do you want to escape from prison to live in Ted Kaczynski's cabin? If you're getting out of prison, it's what's like in that AC/DC song. This thing is like, I'm not spending my life here. I'm not living alone. It's like he wants to find someone to be with. So your desire would be to get back to the world, but can the world no longer be? Can you no longer re-enter the world as a different person?
Well, you're talking with people that probably have committed major crimes and aren't dealing with a full deck to begin with. But I think
Sure.
it's a good
Sure.
point about needing somebody on the outside. So maybe if you escape, you have to know somebody's waiting on the other end that then now be your accomplice. That's why Escape from Dannemora was such a good show. Because it was like fundamentally they had good ideas, right? They had the prison guard. They were gonna go, they knew their route. They were going in like a pretty unpopulated place and be able to go and try to get to Canada. And then it went haywire. But even then they almost made it. They were out there for days and days. Nobody could find them. So I think that when you go to like those more remote places, you probably have a better chance as long as it's not cold, like
Well,
too cold.
and there's so much like songs and films and TV shows from like the 60s and 70s about breaking out of jail. I just gave a bunch of examples of it. Like, were there lots of escaped prisoners in America in the 40s and 50s? Like some
Right.
guy breaks that, gets off a chain gang. I'm a fugitive from a chain gang or whatever. But there's no like when I say like there's no paper trail, it's because paper would have been the only possible trail. A piece of paper saying that you got sent to jail. That's like that. What else is there?
Right.
Like they can't send your photograph or your mugshot or a wanted poster to every post office in the United States. It was like it seems like in the past there would have been a real sort of incentive to try to break out of jail. It might work. It could work well, but I don't think it's possible now.
Well, how do you watch Shawshank now, knowing all the current technology? Because
Uh,
Shawshank, think about like he
yeah.
escapes. That prison, I think, was in Maine in the movie, and he's got to go from Maine to Texas and then cross the border to get to Mexico. And in 2025, he's just getting caught within, I don't know, that. First of all, he's not pulling off really any of the stuff he pulled. He's not going to 12 banks and taking out all the money. They just would have caught him almost immediately, right? This would have been a huge manhunt. In
Well, yeah,
1968, whatever,
I, I,
maybe easier to do.
I haven't seen that movie since it came out. What is he accused of? I can't
Well,
remember.
he's falsely accused of murder. He's accused of
Okay.
murdering his wife, but he didn't do it.
Oh, really? Oh, well, okay,
Yeah,
that's a real crime then. I guess they might be interested in that.
yeah.
Um, uh, yeah, I just sort of remember him kind of working out kind of a pretty good life in prison. He was like helping guys, seemed popular. Didn't worked at
Had
didn't.
to get out. They
Yeah.
killed his favorite guy. Yeah, he ended up in Mexico. Yeah, I don't think that you're not getting on the bus now. Like, I just think they would catch you. So you think in our lifetime, will somebody escape from prison and never be seen again?
I mean, I
Like
don't.
from this moment forward.
Well, I mean, I think since everything happens now, something that could happen, I guess somehow. But it seems just impossible to me. Like I don't know how it would be done in the United States.
Yeah,
Maybe,
because they would be able to track their Google usage. Like they'd have all kinds of tricks.
but even if they can't catch you, it's like you have to re-enter the world, and it's like that's the hard thing. It's like you, it would be very difficult to live a quiet life that doesn't require you to like show your ID for something, show your driver's license, your passport, or something like you to even get like a. I mean, I think there used to be, it would have been possible. Maybe you go somewhere and it's like there's day laborers. They pay you in cash. You can get a job.
Right.
I don't think there's anything like that now.
Well, now they have real ID for flying. Like it's even harder to just fly compared to 30 years ago. You just hop on a plane.
Well,
You
sure.
think somebody could have given you a ticket and be like, yeah, here's my plane.
Yeah, I had to go to the DMV and like wait 4 hours to get that or whatever. I don't know. It seems just like my normal ID, except there's a star on it now or something. But
we have to wrap up. Do you have any generalized AI fears before we go?
Well, many AI fears. I can't think of many other examples of something where almost everybody who understands it seems to believe it could have incredibly catastrophic like outcomes, and yet we just keep going on it. I mean, even like the atomic age and the nuclear age and stuff, it was like we're doing this against our will. Like if Russia wasn't doing this, but like everybody seems to understand. Like that guy for the Times, Ross Douthat,
Yeah,
saying his name. He has this podcast. And he did a kind of interesting podcast with this guy who like used to work in AI and is now sort of like the ultimate like doom and gloom dude. It was kind of interesting, and not implausible except for one aspect to me. Like he's working on a timeline that says like this is going to happen in 2027 or 2028, like a complete reinvention of society within 2 or 3 years. There's part of me, it's like that can't be. There's no way that can, But like I don't know. I'm not. I'm worried about it. I mean, are you? What? Do you have concerns about this?
Yeah, I'm worried about it. I think it's almost going to be, you're going to have to develop two parts of your brain. One that is able to interpret that somebody has done something with AI and made a fake thing seem real. And then the other part that realizes what's real. I was thinking about this. My dad the other day, he sent me this clip. It was a Tibbs press conference. And you know how sometimes they'll do these press conferences and they'll change the wording? And somebody had mailed it to him and he saw it and he was like, I can't believe Tibbs said all this stuff in the press conference. It's crazy. Like he thought it was real. And it was just Tibbs saying crazy shit in a press conference. And it like hooked my dad and he thought it was real. And I was like, that was AI. And he's like, I got to figure out like this is so hard. I'm going to be 78 in November. I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life figuring out what's real and what's not real. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's actually what's going to happen.
Well, okay. I think it's true, but I got to say what you're describing, very low on the list of my things I'm worried about.
Right. You're
very
talking,
low.
This
Incredible.
is the war.
Like what you're
War games would be the highest
the premise of like Mountainhead. Okay. Did you see that show that
I did.
Okay. And like I thought they did a pretty good job of creating a scenario of how someone in this position could kind of create this sort of global chaos or whatever. But I don't think like the fact that they make up these interviews and all that stuff, and it's going to be hard for us to know as consumers if this is a real thing or that's bad, of course. But I isn't the bigger fear that it is going to basically eliminate every interesting job, and the only jobs that will remain are the physical blue.
Oh, you're going there. Yeah, I was thinking like, because the reason I used my dad example was because that made me think, and Mountainhead's a good example of that too, that if you can tweak stuff and make people think something's real when it's not, to me, that's terrifying because eventually we can start doing that with presidents saying things they didn't say and all that stuff. Yeah, when you're talking about like deep what's going to happen to society.
No, I mean, and this is what I'm saying, this timeline they're talking about, they're not talking about like this is something that's going to happen in 20 years. They're talking about these things happening in 2 years. Because the thing that AI can do, and this is like, I don't know, it's so obvious, it's just kind of done. Like the thing that it can do is millions of simulations every second. So,
Yeah.
like, okay, so you can't grow lemon trees in North Dakota, right? So you ask some of these AIs, like, how could we grow lemon trees in a climate that's not hospitable, it's inhospitable, and it will just work through every possibility until it finally concludes, well, what about these 7 things? So it's going to do that with everything, right? Like there are a lot of situations where people go like, well, we won't be able to do this thing, like this thing we'll need, but it will just simulate ways that can be done until it comes up with one. And I
But
don't.
what did you say? There's going to be benefit. I'm just devil's advocating.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's going to be
So
benefits with medicine and health and dieting and all of these things that are probably going to help us.
So the best case scenario is that creates this sort of abundance utopia where AI does everything so well and so effectively and so quickly that we don't have to work, and that you don't and that we it will revolutionize farming in a way that food will be so cheap it doesn't matter if you don't have a job, and it will be able to change all, it will be able to figure out ways to construct homes so cheaply that that's the best case scenario. But no one seems to really think that the best case scenario is the most likely outcome.
No.
What it seems more likely is that it's going to just completely separate society into a fraction of the populace who controls everything because they control the AI technology. And everybody else will really have like no role at all. Like there'll be nothing even there won't even really be a creative role, because it's going to, it's pretty crazy. Like you can put, I put some text that I had written into Chat GPT just to see what, I said, edit this and tell me what you think,
Yeah.
And like one of the things it said is this is very much in the vein of Chuck Klosterman. Like it was pretty wild.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. I was like, wow. It's like I didn't know how to feel about that, to be totally honest. Um, I I think that unless we are wrong about this, but it doesn't seem like it seems like we that this is going to be far more transformative than anyone wants. And yet we still keep pursuing it. There seems to be no attempt at all to slow the idea or to even question what's going to happen when these things start to manifest itself in the way that we speculate is very possible.
So the last time this happened since we've been alive was the internet in the mid 90s. When
No
everyone was
comparison.
telling us no, I know it's no comparison, but
No
when everyone was
comparison.
telling us in the
Yes.
moment,
Sure.
this is going to change everything. And we're like, is it? And they were like, no, watch, it's going to change everything. Really? And then it slowly changed everything. And the AI thing is basically super speeding that, but it's going to change every aspect of life. But remember, even in 97, the concept of paying for something online, we were so terrified.
Yes.
Well, somebody's
Yeah,
going to steal all my stuff.
we didn't want to give it our credit cards. Because somehow it seemed different than giving someone your credit card number over the phone and they were writing it down. It wasn't like the idea that it was sort of in this kind of interconnected system.
Even the movies from that back then, like the net and disclosure, was like, it's all the stuff that's out there. It's gonna take our identities and our lives. And so I do wonder if there's some of that panic with this, but I also agree with you because I think about it a lot with my kids. Like, my kids are 20 and 17, and it's like, what is life going to be like for them in their early 30s?
Well, no,
Is it just going to be everything AI? Are they going to have jobs in the same way? I have no idea.
So, a few years ago, this book Sapiens came out, and I thought it was really great. I realize many people have huge issues with it for all these different reasons, but I thought it was really engaging and really interesting. The author is this Israeli guy, I believe, and I saw an interview with him, and he brought up something that I thought is a pretty kind of fascinating point. He said that this is maybe the first time, the period where now, everyone always thinks that we're living in this totally unique period, and a lot of times it's proved to be false. But in this way, it might be. He's like, throughout any other period of time, if you had a kid who was 5, you had some sense of things that they needed to know by the time they turned 25. If it's the 1500s, it was like you got to learn how to ride a horse. Like you have to learn how to make rice. You need to do all the for us when we were young, it's like we're gonna learn how to drive. Right? You're gonna have to drive in 20 years. You're gonna know how to read. Need to know how to read all these things. This is the first time where we really have no idea what will be necessary or essential to people 20 years from now. It is very possible they will not need to know how to drive. It is increasingly possible they will not need to know how to read. I mean, these fundamental things are completely now kind of up for grabs in a way that is kind of unique to the experience of what's happening with computers right now. And someone's going to be listening to this and they're going to be like, no, that's not true. What about this? Let's talk about the Industrial Revolution and all these things. And I understand that. But there is something bizarre about how unclear the immediate future now sees. Like how no one knows what it's going to be like in 100 years. But I have a sense that we don't know what America is going to be like in 5 years. And that's weird. I mean, that's a weird thing.
Well, and the other thing is all the rich people that buy businesses or try to build businesses or expand businesses and invest in all of these different things and technologies, all of them are just in on AI right now. And that's it. And it's like this big battleground because all those people seem to feel like this is going to determine the future of the next 20 years, period. This is what we have to worry about. We need a plan for this, which makes me nervous.
Yeah. And I also, it's like, because when we talk about these things, always the first idea is like, well, it's going to hurt poor people first. It's going to hurt, sort of marginalized people first, and that's usually how these things work. But this is a little different in that I feel like it could completely reinvent the meaning of the economy, what the economy is, what money means. That there are people right now who are pretty wealthy and pretty secure who could find themselves much closer to the bottom 2% than the top 2% in a short amount of time. That wealth is going to be kind of sandwiched in the degree to which the difference between having $4 million and $40,000 is much less different than it is currently, because the meaning of money will change. And I mean, these are sort of like, and when you kind of look at like metrics that we were used to sort of thinking about, like the idea of inflation, that like every 20 years things double in price. Or if you look back 20 years, what you could buy for $20, you now need $40 for. I don't know if those things are going to continue. Like these things that these kind of loose understandings we have of how money works, things seem to be escalating in a way that makes me, it's kind of strange. We're ending this podcast in this kind of dark way, but I am worried about this and I don't know what can be done.
Well, it does seem like the first time everything's on the table in a long time with culture and life and everything. Like you could tell me AI is going to figure out a way to make all of this food that will be just as edible and healthy as anything else. And it's going to be way cheaper and food will become much, much, much cheaper in all of these different ways. I'd believe it. It's almost, that would almost be like a podcast. What would you not believe about what's going to happen in the next 15 years? I'd believe just about any outcome with AI. Like could we have CNN anchors that are just AI anchors? Maybe. I don't know.
But even the best case scenario is weird. Like, let's say in the best case scenario, AI makes it so that essentially no one has to work. That robots do all the manual physical things. AI makes all the decisions and creates everything. Like, what do we as humans do? Like, what does life become if there is no physical work and no creative work? Like, it seems very okay. I knew kind of buddies with Ben Affleck, so I was like, I don't often say this, but like Ben Affleck said something that I thought I was pretty smart, kind of like I was surprised. He was talking. Someone asked him about this, and he was like, "Well, it's not going to affect like the highest echelon of creative people. Like, it won't affect actors, directors, and so, but it'll affect everything below it. Like there's certain things that people will they will crave humanity in, and they will not accept, a digitized actor in a movie, but all the jobs below it will be gone, sort of. And he said, like, well, when in the movie industry, at one point we lost all this money when DVDs disappeared, because that was like a second release of the movie, and you could kind of make the money back. And that's the reason there's no middle class in filmmaking now, is because we don't have that second boost. But he's like, what if it's in the future? It's like, say you watch all of Succession, and then you have the option to pay, say, $200, and AI will make you one version of Succession just for you, one episode of Succession, where you can say what you want to have happen in it. It will have all the actors.
Create your own adventure, Succession.
You'll have one, so that'll be like the bonus thing if you're fair, And I thought, well, that'd be kind of a cool thing. I wouldn't like the idea of all television being this way, but it would be neat if you could say, like, what if this happened and this happened, and that, and to me, that's kind of a good case scenario. But my thing is this: I think that as time moves on, somebody like my kids, or maybe even your kids, will not see much difference between AI created content and actual content.
Well, especially music. I think music will be the first way that goes. But there'll be some sort of Taylor Swift that's just all AI that becomes popular, and people are like, I don't care if it's not real. I like it.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to think about it, like how it's like in podcasting, right? Like, what if it was possible to take every podcast you've ever done?
I think it's possible now.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
And then kind of create a new like you would just kind of constantly create these ideas from like old ideas,
I'm sure it's going to happen.
Yeah,
we're about to be replaced.
Yeah, well, it could be, and then I guess we're supposed to somehow kind of be. Also, that really kind of plays into this idea that like nothing new will be created. I mean, like I know every time I do any of these things, I am talking about like the slow cancellation of the future, because I'm just obsessed with this idea. I think it's the most important idea I've come across in the last 20 years. But like, it does seem to me that the likelihood of new ideas being kind of put into the cultural bloodstream is just going to disappear. And that and the content we have now pretty much is going to be the content in perpetuity, just sort of repackaged.
Well, the question is, in 20 years, with where we're going with AI, would Nathan Fielder's last rehearsal season even exist? Because AI could never think of that.
Yes, that's true. So I guess some might say, well, that's proof that it'll never happen. That there's no way. Like, what was it? What was the Gattaca tagline? There's no for the human spirit. I think was like that. There's certain things that we'll just never be able to do. Although then, whenever you talk to anybody who knows about AI, they're like, I don't know. It's like once we. Because if you think about AI as a child, right? Think of it as a child, okay? When does a child become self-aware of itself? Like 3 or 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
But are they aware of themselves, or are they being socialized to understand that they're a self and they're something? Is it possible that while AI computers will never become wholly self-aware, they will adopt all the qualities we associate with self-awareness, and it will essentially be indistinguishable? Like they will still be unable to actually cognitively come up with an idea that wasn't someone else's. But there's a lot of people like that too. There's a lot of people who can't come up with any idea they haven't heard from somebody else.
Let's say 2 years from now, AI figures out how to make another Nirvana album. It takes all the Nirvana songs possible, and the technology is so good they could be like, this is actually the album. If Kurt doesn't die in 94, this is the album we think they would have made in 95. And they release an album and it's got songs and lyrics and actually feels like it could have been the Nirvana album. Would you listen to it?
Well, I would definitely listen to it. The question: what if you
liked it?
Okay, this is like a real kind of fucking bullshit answer, but like I would listen to it. The question is, what would I hear? And it would actually force me to confront something that maybe I can't confront, which is that when I'm hearing popular music, am I really listening to the music, or am I also injecting everything I know about the individual who made it and the history of music and what I like about music and what I am like and who I am as a person and what I think rock means, and what all these things into the thing, and then hearing it back. And if it comes from AI, will I be like, the only thing is the sonics? So the music, and there are certainly artists who I already enjoy in that way. That I have no relationship with I don't even know the person necessarily. If I listen to classical music, for example, if I hear some classical music that I like, there's a high likelihood I don't even know who made it, right? I know nothing about, don't know not only do I not know what year it came out, I might not be able even to say like what century it is from, right? So that I'm only appreciating that just for the sound, right? Does that work with a band like Nirvana? Probably not, because pop music, rock music, hip hop, all of these things are not exclusively sonic experiences.
Yeah.
Like they are an outgrowth of a culture that we associate with youth and that we associate with all these other things. And that so it might be, impossible to, like, maybe the highest compliment you'd be able to give in the example you described is like, I can't believe how much this seems like Nirvana. I can't believe how close this is.
So it'd almost be like a plant-based burger.
Yes.
You're like, wow, this really tastes like a cheeseburger.
Yes.
But I also know it's not a cheeseburger.
Although in that case, you could say like, well, this is great now. I'm going to eat this they've made this plant-based cheeseburger that I can't tell the difference. It must be healthier than eating meat. It's going to eliminate our meat for cattle. It's going to, the amount of methane they're supposedly putting out, but also the idea that it's somehow cruel to slaughter them and all these things. That doesn't happen with, like, we wouldn't get the new Nirvana and be like, oh, this is great. It's like, now I don't got to worry about the singer killing himself. Or like, that's not going to happen,
Yeah.
Like the fact that Kurt Cobain killed himself has an impact on how Nirvana sounds. And I know that sounds crazy, but it does for most people. And I guarantee you, if you play Nirvana to somebody who has no idea who Kurt Cobain is compared to someone who does, the appreciation of that music is going to be slightly shifted because it is impossible to not know the things that we know. Yeah?
I feel the same way about Milli Vanilli. They had a couple good songs, but now you can't unsee the fact that there was the lip syncing. I don't know where this goes. It makes me super nervous. And now you've made me uneasy for the rest of the day and we have to go.
I did my job. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Vrbo Private Vacation Rentals. With Vrbo, you can save over $200 on select homes when you stay for a week or more. Say, if you wanted to go catch a couple baseball games in Boston, take some time off work, fly into Beantown, watch the Sox play. After that, you can do anything. You can go book a Vrbo in Cape Cod for a week. The world is your oyster, or your lobster roll, or clam chowder. Really, it has shells, gills, and it's indigenous to the Atlantic. It's your edible metaphor of choice. They're crustacean crazy around there. Guess what? Since you stayed longer than a week, you saved over $200. You know what that means? More shellfish. I love shellfish. Hope you're not allergic. Next vacation, stay longer and save. Make it a Vrbo.